Hey, what's up everybody? I'm Randy. We're back here at Bike Worx continuing the work on our 1950 Panhead chopper build. Today what we're going to go over is getting the oil tank mounted in. We'll get the fender straps nailed down, get all of our bolt hole locations drilled, get them tightened up, and then we'll move on to the next thing, which is going to be the fuel tank. So first things first, we got to get the oil tank in. What I got here is just one of my mock-up plates. This is the lower battery box here. So what it does is you have to put the spacers in, get it bolted up to the factory spot on the front. Once it's in spot, I've got my old fender straps here. We'll go through mounting those, drill all the holes. So we'll use all of our hardware here to get it set in place. Obviously these are going to be refinished before we have a finished product, but they work perfect for doing stuff like this. So I've taken the rear wheel out, loosened the fender so that we can roll it back and get this oil tank mounted in here. Without that, it's just too tight of a fit. We won't be able to get it in. So on this particular model, we have to have a spacer underneath the bottom plate to keep the plate from crushing when you bolt it down on the frame. Kind of important, even when you go through mocking one up, is to have all those parts and pieces in place, just because the littlest detail and the littlest change can throw everything off in the long run. So with that mount tight just in the front, it really makes it pretty sturdy. Now I just hand tighten everything, that way I can still move it around a little bit, line up all my lines. This oil tank's still able to move side to side a little bit. So what you really want to do is, this is the time to take care in lining everything up. So I just come in here and make sure that it all looks straight, looks good. So the next step is going to be to attach the lower part of the fender. Once we get the lower part done, we can roll the sissy bar back into place, and then we'll go ahead and make all of our marks for the fender straps. Now fender straps, they did these on all the early model Harleys where you had a hardtail in it. What it did is, with this lower mount and the upper mount, what it done is it attached the center part of the fender so that this sucker couldn't roll back on you. So what these do is, you can't really see it, inside the oil tank there's two tabs on the back side of the tank. Here's an old one for you. So right up in this spot right here, there's two tabs. We're going to go ahead and sandwich those with these fender straps, and that's what's going to keep the oil tank mounted and the fender mounted at the same time. Kind of eliminates extra mounting straps. Now with these all in place, you wouldn't think that it would make a huge deal of difference, but I really like to make sure that these are symmetrical on the fender. It's just one of those details that when you look at it, 99% of people won't notice, but that 1% of people that actually gives a crap on how finishing is, really is going to see it, and it makes all the difference in that. Alright, so here it is, oil tank's all mounted up. Everything's solid on it now, pretty much where it's going to be. The biggest issue or biggest thing that I have to say about doing any of this is it's pretty straightforward. I mean, it's pretty nut and bolt, put this part in here. But what I really like to do is you really got to pay attention to the littlest details. Placement on your straps, placement on every nut and bolt, placement on everything so that when you go to assemble it, it's a lot easier. Plus, if anyone were to have to take it apart later, you want to make it to where it's not such a pain to take apart. Now obviously this isn't complete finished product. These will all get finished as far as chrome or paint or powder coat. And what I always like to do is between these fender straps put a neoprene washer under there so that later down the road, this is a hardtail. It's going to rattle and parts are going to move around a little bit. So it really just kind of makes you a little insurance so you don't have to keep repainting and repainting parts. So just one of the things that I like to do. Next thing we're going to do is move on to the fuel tank. I like to use as much stuff as I can just laying around the shop. Now obviously I don't like to just build junk parts, but I can use nuts and bolts and spacers and things like that to get the mounts that I want. I really try not to buy as much stuff as I can. I really like to build as much as I can. Obviously with this bike we're going for a period correct look. It's a lot more cost effective to buy a tank that looks just like what it would have been in the 70s and just kind of how this customer particularly likes it. So the fine little detail parts, the nuts and bolts, the mounts, the exhaust, that's where you really get to express yourself and kind of build something a little bit more unique. So next thing we're going to do is it's already got a rear mount into it. We've already done that here at the shop, which I might later change. But for right now, what we're going to do is we're going to build the mount up here at the front. Now I've got it spaced out. I'm going to have to weld the tang onto the front and weld the mount onto the top of the frame. What this will get is a stud sticking up with an ornate nut holding the top of the tank down. Then with the back being underneath of it, it'll clamshell on the back side of the frame, keep the tank from rocking side to side, and this will just be kind of a functional but more decorative piece up front. So that's the next thing that we're going to do. Alright, so what we've done here is taken a little piece of exhaust tubing, shaped it to it, welded it onto the existing tang, drilled our hole in it. Obviously there's hours more of finish work to this, but this is going to be the general process. Go ahead and set it on top of our mount that we welded on earlier. Put our rear bolt in it. So once we tighten the cinch up here, put a cool little nut on top of that, this tank's going to be mounted and done. So that's the idea.